This is 5 on 20 News, where the news is fresh off the press and the newscasters are off the chain, with Nick Cerami
and Saida Olivier,
coming to you from our studio in downtown Tucson. First, the local headlines.
Activists in the Tucson area are pushing for the city to declare itself a sanctuary city. Tucson City, on Friday, a group of 200 people marched to the Tucson City Hall to demand that the City Council use the designation. Being an official sanctuary city would indicate that Tucson is a safe place for undocumented immigrants to not be deported if ordered by the Trump administration. Tucson City Council has already officially declared the city to be immigrant-friendly in a resolution passed unanimously last month. But Mayor Jonathan Rothschild maintained that the declaration did not mean that Tucson is a sanctuary city. The difference is significant because the sanctuary cities would forfeit federal funds, as Trump has indicated on the campaign trail. But no plans have been revealed yet that indicate Trump will follow through with this threat. Stephanie Cott, an organizer of the rally, said that Trump wants to imprison undocumented immigrants to help the private industry in Arizona, which has donated generously to his campaign and received a stock boost upon his election win. She said that it wasn't enough to declare the city immigrant-friendly because it does not specify how far the city would go to protect its undocumented citizens. Oddly enough, there isn't a specific definition of what a sanctuary city actually is. The term was first invented by a right-wing website that formulated a list of what they said were sanctuary cities. Tucson was on that list, but the City Council has repeatedly stated that the designation does not apply to the Old Pueblo.
Arizona could take a $46 million hit if the Affordable Care Act is repealed. The organization Trust for America's Health released a report showing the potential consequences of cutting the state's public health fund. In 2016, the fund granted just under $900 million to the Center for Disease Control for immunization programs and epidemiology labs to stop health threats. But Republicans have not yet released details of an ACA replacement, so it's unclear if they will eliminate the public health fund as of yet. But statements made by Arizona Representative Paul Gosar don't bode well for the fund's future. Gosar said last week that the fund has become a, quote, unaccountable slush fund, and said that sending $2 billion a year to the Department of Health and Human Services is no way to combat public health issues. Instead, Gosar says that sending $2 billion to the Pentagon will be a better way to combat public health because it's, quote, badass. Dr. Daniel Dirksen, a professor of public health at the University of Arizona, disagrees. He points to the cases of the Zika virus and the opioid epidemic as instances where the fund can help the community fight for the risks. He says that public health crises often affect lower-income communities, such as areas with high Native American populations. If the fund were cut, Dirksen claims, then we would have to focus more on treatment rather than prevention, which is less effective.
The Navajo Nation voted unanimously to propose changing their name to the Dine Nation. If the legislation passes, all departments within the Navajo would now be referred to as Dine, which in the Navajo language means the people. Navajo elders commonly refer to themselves with this name. They say that the change will encourage members of the Navajo to learn their roots and speak their own language. The term Navajo originates from Spanish conquistadors, which elders say serves as a daily reminder of the colonization of their culture.
2 people were killed in a plane crash at Tucson International Airport yesterday. Captain Barrett Baker of the Tucson Fire Department said that a twin-engine plane crashed into a blast wall near a parking garage at the airport. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the crash site and requested that it be left as is. No commercial flights were affected by the crash, and there were no additional injuries. The identities of the 2 fatalities have not yet been released.
Well, it looks like Doug Ducey's plan to give a boost for Arizona K-12 education is already hitting a snag. The Arizona Department of Education says that they received $10 million less than requested for information technology services. They say that it will be difficult to figure out which districts will receive the $5 billion in state and federal funding because of the lack of resources. A spokesman a spokesman for Diane Douglas, director of the department, said that Ducey did not budget any additional funding for IT. The department requested $17.6 million, but were given only $7.3 earlier this year, which won't cover routine maintenance for the state's computer system or the salaries of the people hired to run the equipment. On this year's budget, Ducey zeroed out the line that would have provided additional IT funding. But Don Wallace, Ducey's educational advisor, said this was because the requests were just too complicated. He said the additional funding will come through once they have had time to study each particular request more in detail. Wallace then tried to log onto his computer to study the report, but realized he had a virus and the IT guy had already been laid off.
Arizona Republican Senator John McCain has seen the oily light and says that he will vote to approve Rex Tillerson, Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State. McCain delivered the statement along with Senator Lindsey Graham, who has also been critical of Trump's pick so far. The statement said that we need a Secretary of State who recognizes that our nation cannot succeed in a world by itself. Nothing like a former oil man to realize world unity, at least where oil is located. Tillerson has taken heat for being close to Russian President Vladimir Putin, who negotiated a pipeline deal with ExxonMobil, the company that Tillerson ran before being chosen by Trump. Tillerson was even awarded the Order of Friendship by Russia, a rare honor in the country that entitles him to a lifetime supply of borscht. A few weeks ago, McCain said that he would support Tillerson when pigs fly. So D.C. residents were surprised Monday morning when a 200-pound pot-bellied pig sailed over the Washington skyline, snorting with glee. And now, in national and international news.
Today, Donald Trump signed documents to advance the Keystone XL and Dakota Access oil pipelines. President Barack Obama had blocked the construction of the controversial project. Trump says he will renegotiate some of the terms before seeking to, quote, get that pipeline built. Part of this executive action also included a bit about oil pipelines needing to be constructed with U.S. materials. The likely goal of this language would probably be to streamline and shorten the regulatory and environmental review process. On the campaign trail, Trump said that he would support construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, despite the effect a pipeline like that would have on the water in the areas it runs through, and despite protests at Standing Rock. So I guess Trump is proving to be as scary as he promised. But at least these harmful pipelines will create some jobs. Those opposed to the pipeline have begun to criticize his actions and mobilize against the directive. The chairman of Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, Dave Archambault II, stated, quote, Americans know this pipeline was unfairly rerouted towards our nation and without our consent. The existing pipeline route risks infringing on our treaty rights, contaminating our water and the water of 17 million Americans downstream. Amongst those accusing Trump of putting corporate interests ahead of American interests is Tom Steyer, the president of Next Gen Climate, who says that the pipeline are, quote, all risk and no reward, allowing corporate polluters to transport oil through our country to be sold on the global market while putting our air and water at serious risk. Multiple groups have planned rallies, and the Indigenous Environmental Network, a leading organization in opposition to the completion of the Dakota Access Pipeline project, have proposed a new round of massive mobilization and civil disobedience.
And Donald Trump officially pulled out of the controversial Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal yesterday. Due to opposition by congressmen on both parties, they never ratified the TPP in the U.S. On the campaign, opposition to the TPP was a rallying point for both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, along with Bernie Sanders, making the trade deal the one issue that they all agreed on. While supporters lauded his decision, Trump's order was mostly symbolic. The TPP was almost certainly not going to be ratified because of the public souring on the deal. It was criticized as being drawn up in a secretive process where details only trickled out slowly to the public. Americans are skeptical of new trade deals after agreements such as NAFTA, which is seen by many to have cost Americans jobs, although economists have questioned this. The TPP would have connected 12 Pacific Rim nations stretching from Japan to Chile and was meant to be a countermeasure against the growing influence of China. The Obama administration enthusiastically backed the deal, but it never seemed to catch on with the American public. Maybe we'll support it next time when Trump reintroduces it as the very great, not at all bad American deal. Trump also signed an executive order that would impose a hiring freeze on federal workers. The freeze was for the purpose of cost cutting and forces federal agencies to survive on limited resources. The order exempts military positions and in the cases of national security, because why should the military be cost effective? After 90 days, the Office of Management and Budget will develop a long-term plan that, of course, will be great.
Donald Trump hasn't even been in office for a week and he's already facing impeachment. A team of ethics experts and legal scholars filed a lawsuit on Monday against the Trump administration. They charge that Trump is violating the emoluments clause, which bans presidents from taking money from foreign governments. They claim that Trump oversees business invites illegal payments from foreign leaders. The legal filing cited numerous examples of Trump's conflict of interest, including the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, who leases space at the Trump Tower in New York. Another tenant of Trump Tower is the Abu Dhabi Tourism and Culture Authority, who are owned by the government of the United Arab Emirates. The lawsuit also details properties that Trump owns in Scotland, Indonesia, Turkey, the Philippines, and Saudi Arabia, all which will require government permits and exemptions. Individuals involved in the lawsuit include the former ethics advisor to George W. Bush, law school professors from Harvard Law School, the University of California, and Supreme Court litigator Deepak Gupta. U.S. courts have never ruled on the emoluments clause before in the history of the nation, so it is unclear how the lawsuit will be ruled on. As reported yesterday, Trump has so far taken no steps to remove himself from his businesses. He promised last week to leave his businesses in the trust of his two sons and said that he had already signed the paperwork. Responding to the lawsuit, Trump said that Deepak Gupta sounds like some kind of Muslim name, and George W. Bush is jealous because his inauguration had been very bad, tremendously horrible ratings.
Hawaiian natives would like to say aloha to Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. A few days after Christmas, Zuck shared photos of his sprawling $100 million estate in Kauai. 2 days later, Zuckerberg filed multiple lawsuits against hundreds of Hawaiians who own small parcels of land within the boundaries of his estate. If he wins the lawsuit, then the landowners will be forced to sell their land in auction. Locals are protesting against the lawsuit, claiming it's the face of neocolonialism. Land in Hawaii was parceled out to residents in 1850 as part of the Kuleana Act and given to natives. Kapua Sproat, a law professor at the University of Hawaii, said that the lawsuit serves to further separate the Hawaiian people from their land. Zuckerberg has defended his actions as being in good faith. He says that he wants to track down the owners of the land so that he can pay them their fair share, which is 10 free advertising spots on Facebook. At least one of the parcel's owners, Carlos Andrade, supports Zuck and is helping him through the title process. Another owner, Matt Goodale, says that the situation is better than the alternative, which would likely be a condo or hotel development. However, Hawaiian State Representative Kanaliani Ing says that Zuckerberg is going about it the wrong way. She says that initiating conversation with the lawsuit is disrespectful to the Hawaiians. Other owners complain that they don't have access to Zuckerberg because he lives in a bubble with security guards outside of his home. Hope Kalai, who lives on the same street as Zuckerberg, has been trying to contact the Facebook owners through his lawyers and the ranch manager, but so far has gotten no reply. She probably should just try Facebook Messenger.
Peace talks began in Syria yesterday between the Syrian government and anti-government rebels. So far, the negotiations are sounding more like Brangelina divorce drama than diplomacy. The talks were sponsored by Russia, Turkey and Iran, and were held in the capital of Kazakhstan. Russia hopes to establish a mass ceasefire between the groups as Moscow looks to impose its influence on world politics. But so far, it's going so well. The two sides traded insults after the rebels refused to negotiate face-to-face in the first session. Syria's representative said that this shows that the rebels aren't serious about the matter and acted in a way that was removed from diplomacy. Both sides have accused each other of breaking past ceasefires, with the rebels claiming that Assad's forces in Syria are backed by Iranian militias. They called for the release of 13,000 women being held in Syrian prisons on no charges. The rebels' representative said that the negotiations can only begin when Assad gives up the presidency and the Iranian militias leave the country. Complicating matters further is that unaligned groups fighting alongside the rebels have fired on Syrian forces because they were not bound by the ceasefire. This gives Syrian forces an alibi to continue strikes on rebel-held areas. The talks will continue today, but the mood will be lighter when comic Carrot Top will stop by for some mid-afternoon prop comedy.
While we were distracted by Donald Trump howling about his TV ratings, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration released one of the most frightening reports on climate change. The NOAA report, released on President Obama's last day, updated estimates of ocean level rises, and the results weren't good. The report says that sea levels could rise by more than 8 feet by the end of the century, much higher than previous estimates. It also says that certain regions of the U.S., such as the East Coast, could experience a 25 times increase in damaging floods. Normally, these type of reports study worldwide ocean level increases. This is the first major study that looked at regional differences of sea level rise. The report outlined 6 possible scenarios involving sea levels. In the most extreme scenario, ocean levels would increase 8.2 feet by year 2100. In the least serious scenario, sea levels would rise by about a foot. These updated results come from an improved understanding of how the world's major ice sheets are affected by physical processes. On the same day, the Independent UK reported that the British government tried to cover up a government report on climate change that had similar grim conclusions. But everything will be okay because our new president is going to fix everything, right? Well, it's not looking so good. The website E&E News got a hold of emails sent by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention that show that the group canceled a climate change meeting scheduled for next month. The email doesn't mention if the meeting would be rescheduled, but based on past statements by Trump regarding climate change, it's safe to say that the meeting won't happen. Instead, Trump will direct the Energy Department to create a gigantic sideways straw so he can take Iraq's oil.
Our new president achieved a milestone this weekend, and it wasn't just being the first president to have massive protests a day after he was elected. Donald Trump officially started his presidency by ordering his first bombings of the Middle East, a rite of passage for any U.S. president. On January 21st, the U.S. commanded a drone strike in 3 areas of Syria, with a total of 50 bombings overall. The strike didn't result in any deaths, at least that we know of, and served to destroy fighting positions, artillery, and tunnels belonging to the Islamic State, according to the Defense Department. 50 strikes seems like a lot, but that was only the beginning. Another 12 bombings struck 6 different areas of Iraq, destroying Islamic State vehicles and buildings. No word yet on how much the damage would cost to rebuild, but at least 200 terrorists were created just by the bombings. Either way, the Pentagon is looking forward to bombing the same areas in a few months. Congratulations, Donald Trump. You're now part of the club.
Last week, we reported that several pages on whitehouse.gov disappeared from the homepage. Now it looks as though the White House no longer speaks Spanish. The English language page on whitehouse.gov has also disappeared into the ether. As of Monday, it was unclear what happened to the page and if it would return. Some wonder whether this is a message intended to show off Trump's America First theme that he spelled out in his inauguration speech. The move has reignited the age-old American pastime of arguing why immigrants should speak American. As we all know, the U.S., a nation of 52 million Spanish speakers, has no official language. Yet, this hasn't stopped freedom-loving politicians from complaining that they have no right to use their native language in public. Trump spokesman Sean Spicer said that the administration was, quote, working hard on getting the pages back up, but didn't address the Spanish language page. But don't hold your breath, because the administration was also working hard to get a hold of Obama's birth certificate. Defenders of the website Stumble say that this is a normal protocol for a change in administrations and pointed out that the pages are indexed online. However, internet sleuths pointed out that most of these indexed pages return a 404 error when visited. And these are the guys that are going to create an Obamacare website replacement.
And residents of a small English town are being terrorized by late-night phone calls from people looking for X-rated TV channel called Babe Station. People in the picturesque town of Westport are annoyed at the barrage of calls asking to play reruns of Becky Got Back and 10-Foot Pole. One Babestown call went to an elderly mother who was asked about her favorite sex position. Lucky for the caller, old granny was in a randy mood and responded that her favorite was the Bobby Soxer, a popular sex position in the 1940s. Officials in Westport are looking into the issue, but say that they have limited powers. But residents of the town say that they should not be forced to change their phone numbers. To compromise, the mayor of Westport has suggested that the townspeople just become experts on X-rated films in charge for the phone calls by the minute.
This was Nick Cerami
And Saida Olivier for 5 on 20 News.
Up next, Zaira will be talking some local politics, but first, let's take a look at this Saturday's Women's March in Tucson.
You can smile, you can grin, but in the end, baby, can you win? You can do those things that make you wanna swing, but can you win? Yeah, baby.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there. She's gonna be there. It's just gonna be so much today. If she's there. Oh, good.
We worked really fucking hard to be where we are today, and they're just saying it doesn't matter, but it does.
No.
Hi, I'm Brittany Catter. We're going to the Women's March. Come on, come on.
The best disaster ever.
What just happened?
Computer, like, that was frozen. So we went live and that wasn't working at all. So I started reading it.
Do you want to say something?
The phone started ringing, fell on the ground, and my husband was just like, yeah, we had to cut the line started.
Hi. What brings you here today?
Needing a pick-me-up, and I instantly already feel so much better just being here and knowing that there are so many more people that support women's rights and everything that we're here to protest. It just feels so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My America means to me that we protect our women, that we protect other people that can't speak for themselves, and even some people that are afraid to speak for themselves. I'm here. I've never protested ever. I'm meeting my mom over there. We went to get our rain ponchos because we were going to be here whether it rained or not. And so I think that when you say nothing, you say a lot, and you say it's okay. And so for me,
tell your
that's
brother
okay.
how bad everything was earlier. We had to like get off.
Thank you guys for being
We
here.
were live and then we had to get off.
Oh yeah, I was here.
That was horrible.
Whatever
That was
the government tells you to do, you have an understanding inside you of what's right. And many, many women in the world are going to be sharing that with you. A terrible time in some ways, but it's also a very exciting time to see so many people and puppets activated.
Then I got a phone call.
How do you see yourselves participating in the next few years?
To be like, I don't know, just coming and participating and being with other women and showing them like that it's okay. You have to be insecure sometimes. Yeah.
So,
Well, my friends have told me that they knew I was an activist before, but I'm definitely an activist now. I see myself taking much more of a presence, opening my mouth more, speaking up, not just being a Facebook activist. I think there's people they do great work on Facebook, but really getting out from behind your computer and putting, your money where your mouth is. So, yeah.
Do you need this?
sure.
Okay, hold on.
Here, I'll grab it. All right.
As I used to tell my husband, I don't mind men. I think every woman should own one.
I've never gone through this before. Interviews
Great.
or
You're doing great.
All right,
You're doing great.
I just wish this would stop, and I would love to see every religious leader in the world step up and say it is a sin to rape or murder women. Or murder anyone, to tell you the truth. And I'm proud of Tucson, Arizona. I love this city.
Likewise.
Okay? All right.
Thanks so much. There you are.
Okay, thank you. And don't get a cold.
I won't.
The one person.
This is the hand.
With me.
The hand that takes.
Oh, yeah. Well, my husband didn't want me to put pussy grabbing on a sign, so I just could do the grabbing. And then all the states that are legislating women's bodies. I was in Texas while they were closing all the clinics. There's so many.
This is the hand. The hand that takes.
Oh, damn.
Okay, we're gonna start slow, and then we move fast. Okay, let's start. ¡Sí se puede! 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 ¡Woo! Tucson, Arizona!
And my son, who's 12, really never saw me as being the activist, get arrested mom, and I'm afraid now he might find that because it's made me angry and active, and you know what? I think it's going to make a lot of America a lot more aware of issues because they're going to start feeling the squeeze.
This is what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
Tell me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy.
To the first peoples of this region, the Tohonotam, thank you for allowing us to be part of this wonderful region. The Pascuayaqui people, thank you. My name is Regina Romero. Today is only the beginning of the resistance. We will conquer with love and kindness.
I wanted to ask, what does the woman of the future look like to you?
Yeah, that's like, I think understanding that, like, I think in general women have a greater understanding of the fact that, like, there's a lot of other things going on outside of themselves, and embracing that and seeing, like, how can I help, or like what can I do to improve other people's situations, because in turn it helps myself.
Right.
You know, like if everyone else is doing well, we all do well.
Just don't give up, you know, no matter what, even though it feels like you're down and there's no way out, there always is. And if you look around, there's millions of women, and they can't stop us.
Thanks so much for talking with us. Right on. I got a pink hat.
Good evening and welcome again to Adelante Tucson, Tucson's new platform for unapologetic political analysis. I am your host, Zaira Olivier.
And I'm your co-host, Stephanie Cott.
Today we'll first discuss our new favorite Trump-related bits, #WasteTheirTime2017, and later we'll discuss the massive protests that swept the country, including the Women's March. Now let's explore all the ways in which the most orange world leader is wasting our time during his first few days in office, #WasteTheirTime2017. So far, the ogre-in-chief Trump had an incredibly busy few days of signing executive orders, which is surprising considering the size of his disturbingly tiny hands. To begin, Trump emerged from whatever cave he sleeps in and immediately signed executive actions advancing the construction of the Keystone XL and the Dakota Access oil pipelines. This comes after, as we mentioned earlier, President Obama took different actions to block both pipelines as a direct result of public outcry. The Dakota Access Pipeline was halted after months of protests led by almost 100 Native American tribes and hundreds of representatives of Native peoples and solidarity groups and many individuals from around the country. The DAPL is being built to bring oil from the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota through North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Illinois. Like the long-opposed Keystone Pipeline, this more than 1,000-mile-long oil pipe is meant to bring oil from the upper Midwest and Canada to tank farms and refineries in the Midwest and Gulf Coast of the U.S. These oil pipelines pose a great danger not only to the communities that they pass through, but also to the environment, as the production and distribution as well as the use of oil is the leading contributor to climate change. As the struggle continues, we encourage all progressive people to support the struggle of Native Americans to protect their lands and to protect their waters from corporate greed. Similarly, Trump also wasted no time instituting a complete government-wide hiring freeze. However, to no one's surprise, military hiring was the one large exception. No, the largest military force in the world has ever known could not afford a hiring freeze, but on the contrary, it must continue to invest in the never-ending wars the military-industrial complex and our puppet politicians are so fond of. Trump has repeatedly asserted that the American taxpayer must be respected, which is an interesting choice of words considering that the U.S. spends more than any other countries combined, a total of $711 billion per year. How's that for respecting you taxpayers? Also, it is important to know that the federal workforce as of today is actually 10% smaller than it was in 1967, with wages adjusted to inflation either stagnating or falling for decades across the country. Presidents Carter and Reagan were the last to freeze federal funding. Interestingly, the Government Accountability Office issued a report in 1982 which concluded that the freeze cost taxpayers more than they had actually saved. This marks yet another example of Trump promising his voters a gift that they themselves would later have to pay for.
In an unsurprising turn of events, egomaniacal Cheeto President Donald Trump, along with his women-hating KKK cabinet of white men, reimposed a Reagan-era ban known as the Global Gag Rule on international aid to groups that discuss, teach, lobby, perform, or even suggest abortions. Primarily through USAID, the United States spends about $600 million a year, which varies depending on fiscal year budgets, on international assistance for family planning and reproductive health programs, making it possible for more than 200 million women and couples to access contraceptive services and supplies. None of the previous funding provided by the United States was directly used for abortion procedures, given that it was already banned by federal law under the 1973 Helms Amendment. This move will gravely hinder the impact of international aid groups and organizations in ensuring access to comprehensive sexual education and healthcare needs, as well as crippling local efforts like community clinics, availability to hospital services, and training for healthcare workers. This barbaric executive order will have severe implications, if not deadly implications, on the millions of women and girls in developing countries and conflict zones who often resort to dangerous methods of ending unwanted pregnancies when they lack access to safe abortions. The World Health Organization estimates that every year, more than 21 million women, almost all in developing countries, rely on unsafe abortions to terminate unwanted pregnancies, resulting in 47,000 deaths and more than 5 million avoidable medical complications, accounting for about 13% of all maternal deaths. And 99% of all maternal deaths occur in developing countries. Although overall abortion rates have steadily declined in developed regions, the case is not the same for developing nations. Widely available, corroborated, and documented evidence unequivocally shows that nations which provide widespread comprehensive sexual education, access to contraceptives, and health services have some of the lowest rates of teen pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and incidences of abortion. This is not a morality issue, this is a human rights issue. And although some might say that this was a direct retaliation against women after the historic Women's March on Saturday, where over 4 million women rejected Trump unanimously in a single day, possibly setting a world record, let's not forget that Trump's misogyny and sexism has been integral characteristics of his campaign platform, his political agenda, and his personal beliefs. And this country's obsession with both politicians, or by both politicians and civilians alike, to police the lives of women under the guise of pro-life ideology only until the child is born, then it's someone else's problem, is one which will continue to be reinforced by this administration's repressive Christian fundamentalism. But I guess for people like Mike Pence, causing the largest HIV epidemic in Indiana's history is just the beginning of making America great again. What a pious Christian he is.
And now on to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. As noted earlier, the new mighty overlord Trump has signed an executive order formally withdrawing the country from the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, also known as the TPP, originally signed by 12 Pacific Rim countries in 2015. This neoliberal free trade deal on steroids, which would have represented around 40% of the world economy, would have forced the economies of developing countries to become even more subservient and dependent on the market mandates for the financial capitals of the world. Additionally, Trump also vowed to negotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, which includes Mexico and Canada.
Wrapping up #WasteTheirTime 2017, let's discuss DACA. According to the new White House Chief of Staff, the new administration will be working with the House and the Senate to find a long-term solution for childhood arrivals who now have temporary legal status due to an executive order signed into law by President Obama. This was a definite shock to many since Trump had repeatedly promised to repeal DACA within his first 100 days in office. But I suspect that the financial and logistic infeasibility, along with the tedious bureaucratic legal procedures of sending almost 1 million people to court, which he would have to do, has more to do with this move than a genuine interest in foregoing a tax on dreamers. He's also a compulsive liar.
Now on to Tucson politics. Last Friday, on a cold and rainy afternoon, hundreds of people gathered outside of the Mercado San Agustin on the west side of Congress Street as part of the National Day of Action against Trump's inauguration. This was a solidarity march for a variety of issues: immigrants' rights, Black Lives Matter, water protection, environmental justice, and women's rights, just to name a few. Unquestionably, the most anticipated part of the event was the rally held just outside the city mayor's office to demand Tucson be declared a sanctuary city. The march was led by Immigrants' Rights Action Committee Lupe, who energetically led the hundreds of protesters all the way to the doorsteps of City Council building.
After reaching the City Hall complex, an extraordinary lineup of local activists, including Isabel Garcia, longtime immigrants' rights activist, lawyer, and founder of the Coalición de Derechos Humanos, spoke on the multitude of reasons why the city of Tucson must be declared a sanctuary city, outlining the important historical, social, cultural, and economic factors that tie the immigrant rights movement to a larger system of oppression. Amidst popular folkloric songs of resistance, a delegation of activists and community members who attempted to enter the City Council building to deliver the demand letter directly to Mayor Rothschild were denied entrance by police officers and security forces. Throughout the event's planning process, the mayor, who had been cordially invited to personally receive the demand letter, along with City Council members, had full knowledge of the day's event, yet our elected officials refused to meet with their constituency. Although Regina Romero of Ward 1 took part in the beginning stages of the march, the rest refused to participate and engage in the collaborative efforts of the community they are supposed to represent and serve. After informing the crowd that Mayor Rothschild was absent from his office, the officers announced that only one person would be allowed to enter the building. What ensued inside the office was an unpleasant interaction with Mayor Rothschild's communication director, Lisa Markula, who stated that she just, and I quote, didn't see the purpose in receiving a piece of paper or coming down to receive the letter and refused to do so. The organizing committee, Lupe, strongly expressed their intentions to continue the pressure for a sanctuary city, committing to future actions and demonstrations until local officials take a definitive position.
What is interesting is that our Tucson government is completely democratic. While we might expect this kind of contempt coming from Republicans, it speaks volumes more when it comes from the party that is supposed to represent the people's interest. What is even more telling is the fact that Mayor Rothschild, along with many other elected officials, had the time and courtesy to attend the Women's March the very next day. And while one cannot fault them for joining in such a large civic action, now coined the largest protest in American history, we can't fault them on their obvious preferences. Why is one constituency worthy of the time more than the other? Why is what is it about the crowd? Was it the difference in demands? Is a 200-person march not worth the photo op to our politicians? Just receiving the letter would have been a simple gesture. Is a gesture too much to ask for? Would the mayor have received the letter if he personally had any undocumented family? These are questions we have to ask. We as people need to demand full representation. One criticism for this action came from the establishment. According to them, people must be happy with what they get, and demanding more from their allies is something that they have no right to ask for. To that, I would like to say symbolism has no place in politics anymore. During the time of Trump, politics as usual no longer applies. Politicians either do the work we demand of them or we vote them out. We can like you, but we will not coddle you. Times have changed for all of us.
And the times, they are a-changin'. And even though City Council and the mayor failed to recognize the danger of this administration, going so far as to ask us to not panic, to wait, to see, well, now we're seeing. Just yesterday, Julie Kirchner, former executive director of the anti-immigrant hate group Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, who also served as Trump's campaign former immigration advisor, you know, the one who advocated to deport 3 million people in the first year of his presidency in office, she's been named Chief of Staff at U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which is the largest federal law enforcement agency within the Department of Homeland Security. So to our city officials, we're tired of waiting and we've seen enough. Until next week, I'm Stephanie Cott.
And I'm Sarah Olivier. This is Adelante Tucson. Thank you for joining us.